Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
All right. Welcome again, gentlemen, to another episode of the Mountaintop Podcast. My name is Scott McKay, at Scott McKay on Twitter, at Scott McKay on Parler, Real Scott McKay on Instagram, and Scott McKay on YouTube. You can find us on the web at mountaintoppodcast.com, and definitely join us on Facebook and what's got to be one of the fastest growing groups for like-minded men of character who want to be better in their careers, go on bigger and better adventures, and have better women in their life. That is, of course, the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook. With me today is a guy I've known for about a decade. We met when we shared the stage together in Germany, and he is a charisma coach, which is a somewhat rare commodity in this world because I guess, first of all, you have to be charismatic yourself and walk that talk in order to qualify to teach others to do the same. And he is certainly that guy. He's a very personable sort from the UK. His name is none other than Marcus Oakey. Marcus, good to connect with you again after quite a long time, my friend.
Yeah, after a decade. I think that's when we met all that time ago. And it's great to be here, Scott. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Likewise. I'm glad you're here. You know, we did video beforehand, and after a whole decade, it looks like neither of us look any worse for the wear. Looking good, man.
We're moisturizing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's been about $1.05 here the last few days in Texas. So if there's anything we're doing around here, it's moisturizing both internally and externally. So I'll tell you what. We've never done this topic around here before. I think we've talked about how to be personable and how to make women like you, this, that, and the other. We had a very entertaining author come on and talk about how to be more likable in general. And yet, this word in particular, charisma, is not one that has come up much. How do you define charisma to start off here, Marcus? What is your definition of the term itself?
Well, you know, Scott, when I first was thinking that question myself, I didn't have a clear answer. And throughout history, a lot of people haven't really had a clear answer on what charisma is because it's almost an elusive trait. But as I dug deeper, I found that for me, charisma was the ability to evoke emotions in others whilst making them feel comfortable while you do it. So that could be a positive emotion. For example, you make somebody laugh. Or it could be even a negative emotion. Perhaps you make them feel tense when you walk in a room. But as long as they feel safe and can hold space with you, that, for me, at the surface level, is what charisma is.
Now, the term itself, the etymology of it is Greek, and it comes from a word that means roughly gift of grace in Greek. Therefore, you have certain types of Christian churches that would describe themselves as quote unquote charismatic, and they would typically believe in the outward manifestation of spiritual gifts. But that, of course, is a different term than the one that's used in a social context. And that would more closely match what you're talking about. But in many ways, the etymology of the word still fits, right? I mean, you have a spirit about you that tends to blow through a social setting. And the way I would put it, and I'll love to hear what you have to say about this particular twist on it, is charisma to me is kind of a charming influence. People like you, they want more of you, and they hang on every word you say and they act on it. When someone's charismatic, it seems to me they have that capability socially with other people, which, of course, Marcus, represents a whole lot of social capital.
I completely agree. Now, I think when I think about the word charisma, like you've described, I think of effortlessness. So whatever context you're in, whether you're on a stage or whether you're working a room or perhaps you're on a train talking to the person next to you, is the experience for you effortless? And is it effortless for the person you're speaking to as well? So I feel that's the quality I look for, no matter what the context. And when I was first, really wondering what it is, what does charisma mean? I found, I think, a role model that really stood out for me. This was a guy I met at college. That's how far back the journey starts. And he'd walk in a room and everyone would be looking at this guy. And words would flow out of his mouth. People would laugh. And I thought, I want what this guy's got. But I made the mistake. I tried to be like this person who I wasn't. And it made me consider that actually there's probably lots of types of charisma, because charisma is very specific. We know it when we see it or when we feel it, but one person's charisma, who might be still introverted and very intense, might be completely different to, say, someone who's being really social, chatty, and friendly. So I think charisma's got lots of different aspects to it, lots of different sub-qualities, or sub-modalities maybe is a better word. But I think the feeling of effortlessness, that's what really shines through whatever the context.
Yeah, that rings true in my mind as well. It seems like everybody I've ever counted as a charismatic human being had this thing down. I mean, they got this. And that's a key part of inspiring confidence, which to me is part of that ability to charm and inspire people and make them want more of you and want to be like you and take what you're saying seriously and act on it. I mean, there's a credibility that comes with that belief in one's own competence that occurs as confidence to people. So clearly, if you lack confidence, you're not going to be very charismatic. I am particularly drawn by the idea you just alluded to, that not all charisma is the same. People can be this effortless, charming, and competent person who has tremendous impact on a population and have a completely different personality type or even a completely different contextual environment than someone else who's equally charismatic. I mean, you think of someone who's a political activist. They're not going to be the same as someone who is a very winsome stand-up comedian, at least maybe not typically. So while someone may be charismatic in a very stern, angry, and physically powerful sense, for example, I mean, think even of an NFL player who's particularly good at giving interviews, or like even a pro wrestler. You know, those guys often have to have charismatic personalities in the midst of looking big and tough, you know, compared to someone who's in a completely different setting, perhaps with a completely different purpose, be it comedic or dead serious or anywhere in between. And really putting the pieces together of what those people have in common is what adds up to this elusive sense of charisma, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I actually bumped into Mick Foley in a bar in Orlando once. And as he walked in, he turned the air to electricity. He didn't even say anything. But what I could do is I could approach him and talk to him and connect with him in that way. And I think what it comes down to, why there's all these different types of charisma, is I think it really depends on what our personal values are. What are the virtues that we move through life with, that we choose to align with? So, for example, a value that I aspire to is happiness. So that value is going to come out in how I project my charisma. And I think we can look at charisma being almost a value that we have turned up to the max. So the values that we collect for ourselves, that we align to, that we aspire to, when we're able to unstifle ourselves, to let those really shine, that's when our own frequency will come out, our own signature charisma.
Well, yeah, you know, what comes to mind immediately when you're talking is if you're trying to please everybody, you please nobody, and therefore you're going to completely lack charisma because you don't have enough of a belief in your own thoughts and personal influence to be able to bravely, boldly, and confidently attempt to impact others with it. Something that comes to mind is, depending on which side of the aisle you're on politically, you're going to either think a particular politician is charismatic or you're going to think they're a total idiot and a buffoon. And it has a lot to do with that shared value system and or lack thereof, which you just alluded to, right? That's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there with the concept of belief. If we imagine ourselves just as an experiment, as computers, most people haven't really got a strong idea of what software they're running in their mind, in their brain. And the core of that software is your belief. So I'm a big believer, somewhat irony there, but I'm a big believer in summoning what I'm about into one sentence. And I call this the Unbreakable Law. So an unbreakable law could be something like, I'm awesome and I move through the world from a place of fun. That could be an unbreakable law. Or another unbreakable law could be, I make fantastic stories wherever I go, or I'm super lucky. So what do I mean by an unbreakable law? Well, this is a belief that we hold that is so firm that whatever happens in the world around us, it cannot be changed. It cannot be phased because we believe it so much. And when we have alignment and we're connected with an unbreakable law and we install that in us, that's how we are able to hold space being who we are. So I really think that when our belief system is down pat, when we've got a really firm grip of the software that's running the computer of the mind, that we know our unbreakable law, whatever that is. And I'd invite anyone just to think of a really good sentence for yourself that you want to move through life with. I personally, I've shared a few ideas, but I love the idea of just being really lucky. That's great. See what happens if you hold that belief for yourself and see what happens to your life around you. Because the very first thing, if you do that, is life is going to test you. If you say, I'm an amazing conversationalist, I can go and talk to anyone anywhere, or I'm very lucky, or great things happen to me, you can bet your bottom dollar that something great isn't going to happen to you. Your conversations are going to go terrible, and you're going to be incredibly unlucky. And that's what life is doing, is it's seeing if you really want that belief system.
Yeah, kind of a Norman Vincent Peale concept of the power of positive thinking, or in more modern terms, a kind of law of attraction sense that what I believe will come into being. I'll tell you what, you're talking about being lucky. I've always thought, on a related note, that it would be fantastic to be overrated. Wouldn't that be just great? I would love to be overrated at some point in my life and just bask in that. But anyway, what you're talking about sounds a lot to me like what Stephen Covey referred to as unifying principles. And his way of teaching, of course, he's the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, famously. A unifying principle in Stephen Covey's world was a statement about one's own beliefs that starts with I am. It's present tense. I am a man who does this. I am a guy who believes in this. I make sure to do this. And absolutely, positively, as we talk about on this show constantly, it is so important to a man's integrity, his character, to know who the hell he is, to have a foundational belief system, because without that foundation, you have nothing to build on. And if you want to be influential to the rest of the world, if you want to have a take and have people who think along the same lines as you be inspired by it, you have to know what that belief system is before you could even think about how to articulate it and how to represent it in the real world, especially with any sense of competence or confidence at all, right, Marcus?
Absolutely. And here's the interesting thing. I think if you don't have a strong belief system, you'll likely get swept up into somebody who does have a strong belief system.
Then you'll end up on Twitter calling other people idiots when they challenge you, because you won't know why you believe what you believe. You just believe what someone else taught you, and that's not foundational.
Right. And it's interesting, though, isn't it? Because children, for the most part, we consider have got a natural charm, charisma. So what happens as we get older and it goes? Where does our natural charisma, our innate strength that we're born with, where does it disappear to? And I think the answer to that is we become subjected to other people's beliefs. As we get older, we start taking responsibility for ourselves, finding out what we're about. And the software gets removed, the belief system goes. And if we're lucky, we get to put our new one back. But if we're not so fortunate, we pick up someone else's and we don't do our own thinking anymore. And that's when we become influenced easily.
I'll tell you what, here's a hint for all you guys who are listening. And I'm sure most of you guys won't even need to hear this because I can read my audience pretty well. I know who these guys are. But just for laughs, I'm going to go ahead and present this idea anyway. If you're finding that people on social media frequently respond to you with something to the effect of, oh boy, I bet you're a lot of fun at parties, chances are you've probably lost that innocent childhood charisma somewhere. Just saying.
Yeah. So.
And Marcus says to me, yeah, I bet you're a lot of fun at parties.
Not to your face, obviously.
What did I say? What did I do? I didn't mean to elicit that response. I am no fun at parties, by the way. I'm a tired drunk. That's probably the biggest reason why I gave up alcohol, because I just don't like feeling tired. But I am the weirdest drunk. I just get tired and I don't feel like being social anymore. I'm like the opposite of a fun drunk. It's weird.
I think it's okay to not be sociable. When I started the journey, I wanted to learn how to be sociable. And then when I mastered being sociable, and to be fair, I'm still learning. But when I got to the point where I was really happy with it, I realized I didn't have to go and talk to everyone. That actually I was really just kicking my own ass, trying to force myself to maybe do things I necessarily didn't want to do. So it's good to listen to yourself. But going back to that thing you mentioned about having a very strong I am statement, about being in the present, I love that. And the whole idea of getting to that point where it's effortless is to get, I think, to a place of is-ness, which might be going down the rabbit hole a bit.
But what a fantastic term.
Yeah.
Because I know immediately what you mean.
Okay. I guess how I would define it, just for anyone listening who, just to keep you on the same page as me, I guess, for me, is-ness is the same thoughts and feelings. There's no words. It just is. It just comes from a place of knowing.
Marcus, would you say you're in the is-ness business? You are now.
Yeah.
Stolen. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to steal your thunder. Carry on, my friend.
Well, the is-ness is where things become effortless. And the is-ness is when you're moving through life from a place of no obstruction. Now, one of the things that I find, it's very easy as we move through life, especially if we're taking action and making ripples, is that we clash against people. We clash against things, ideas, opinions, and whatnot. And so the way that I keep myself in a state of is-ness is to practice the very simple habit of adopting the word maybe. I like to think of everything as, yeah, maybe. So, for example, if somebody says to me, you're not very charismatic. Yeah, maybe. Or, oh, you're very charismatic. Yeah, maybe. And not necessarily bringing on anyone else's belief system into my own. I want to keep my belief system my own and clear. So I do that by holding that state of maybe. And that allows me to remain in a state of is-ness.
Well, now hold on a second. I want you to elaborate on this state of maybe, because to a lot of guys who are used to being black and white thinkers and either your yes is yes or your no is no, that's going to sound kind of flaky.
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, no, that flies in the face of what a lot of leadership coaches would say. Jack Welch, a bad decision is better than no decision. That's not a maybe. You either act in a decisive way or you don't, but no decision is coming from a position of weakness. And maybe sounds like kind of bowing out from any personal responsibility. So, for example, can you come to my party? Will you please RSVP? Maybe is the battle cry of the apathetic masses nowadays. So please elaborate more on the value of a maybe in this context.
And I will spare us going down the maybe response path. So the maybe for me is I'm not going to adopt somebody else's belief system. I'm going to consider it. And that's what maybe allows me to do. So, for example, if somebody tells me about their day, they say, oh, God, I had a terrible day. Everything's really bad out there. Have you noticed? Yeah, maybe. I'm not going to pick up their pain. So I guess what it is for me is maybe allows me to be objective. Now, for my own decisions, I'm going to be hell yeah or hell no. There is no hell maybe, right? So everything is going to be polarized like that, where I'm acting, where I'm being, where I'm expressing myself from my own belief systems. Yes, that's going to be strong, but those decisions are going to be my own.
What a great heavy metal band name that would be. Hell maybe.
Better than those decisions are going to be my own.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I hear you saying is this idea of the maybe allows you to remain present in a conversation or interaction with a person who may think differently than you, while enabling you to keep an open mind without either feeling compelled to blindly accept what the other person's telling you because you feel socially pressured, or dismissing it outright, which would make you look like a jerk to this other person. It helps you process something in the moment without any impression that you're being either overly dogmatic or blown and tossed by the winds of whatever someone else's opinion is, because you don't have any foundation of your own. It's a nice placeholder, in other words.
Yes, I feel we live in times now where we seek to influence one another quite a lot.
Maybe.
The idea, yeah, right? The concept of influence for me is not so much being proactive, like you will think this, you will do this, because that for me is a state of power. So power is the ability to get stuff done quick. But I'm more interested in strength. Strength is getting stuff done slow but firm. So power is easily lost, but strength doesn't go easily. If you work out down the gym, if you miss a session, you haven't lost all your strength. But if you lose your power, politicians are doing it all the time, trying to usurp one another. It's a game. So from my own personal perspective, I don't want to be part of that game. I want to move in a direction strongly. And if people want to follow me, they can. And if they don't, that's fine. I haven't got the time to convince them. And I don't want to pick up their pain as I'm doing that. So that for me really is what maybe allows. It allows me to, as you elegantly said, it allows me to acknowledge that I'm listening to them. But I don't want to persuade them. I think going back to Greek times, I think in those times, I wasn't around at the time, but in those times that the idea of asking questions to one another was to understand one another. But now it seems that we ask questions really to hoodwink the other person, to get them to show the weakness in an argument, where back in the day it was more so the person asking the questions could understand and know the topic inside and out. So I'm interested in learning from that perspective, to have that maybe, to allow that person to share their thoughts, their ideas, and see, yeah, I like how that feels, or I'm not sure about that. I'll ask them some more questions. But that maybe gives me the space to do that. And with that knowledge, with that information, then I can use that to act from a place of certainty.
Yeah, the Socratic method is so 3,000 years ago.
I know, I'm just catching
right.
up.
I love your differentiation between power and strength, because I've never heard that take before, and I'm not sure I still fully grasp it, maybe because I lack power or strength. But strength, you're talking about something that's more strategic, whereas power seems something more tactical. It's something you exert in the moment.
I think power relies on the compliance of others, where I think strength just relies on yourself. So strength, it's said by who, I don't know, they're probably dead, but strength is the virtue that allows all other virtues to flourish. So if you're strong, you're going to be a happier person. If you're strong, you're going to be more confident, and so forth.
Well, that would kind of match up with what I said. Power is something you use in the moment for influence or quick bursts of energy to get people to align with you or to exert what you want to get done, whereas strength is something that is indeed more foundational, like we've been talking about. I mean, you have intestinal fortitude. You have an inner strength that propels you forward throughout your entire life, whereas power, as you duly noted, can be fleeting. I mean, a politician, for example, can be in office one day and, tomorrow he's Al Gore, right?
Yeah. Have you ever, do you read Marvel comics at all?
I do not. I'm not a big comic book guy. I just lost half my audience, I'm sure, but.
Yeah, worse. Well, I didn't grow up as a big comic book guy, and I'm still not a very big comic book guy, but I am a bit of a geek. And I was flipping through one of these fan pages for a character called Dr. Doom, who's a bad guy. But I loved the concept. There was this whole episode where he's stripped of all his power, this character, this super evil villain, and he's thrown on a planet with nothing but himself, just completely naked. And the whole idea is in 1 year, some people visit the planet and he rules the entire planet. I was like, that's cool. And that for me is, through metaphor, through the story of the comic, is, you've got this villain who's quote unquote powerful. He's got all his weapons and whatnot, but really his strength is his self-sufficiency. So I'm not saying charisma is about being an evil overlord or anything like that. I'm just saying that this idea of being resilient and strong allows you to fashion the tools that you need anyway, whether they are powerful tools or whether you're solving a problem in the moment.
Well, this idea of being charismatic then sounds more like a journey instead of a switch that you would flip. So what would you tell these guys in terms of how they can prepare themselves to become more charismatic as they go through their lives and to have that mindset and start developing the skills and the talents necessary? Because, I mean, let's face it, Marcus, not a whole lot of people out there are genuinely charismatic. I think most of us can count possibly on both hands the number of people we personally know who really have a genuine charisma of any sort. So as a coach of this stuff, what are the first steps for these guys?
Well, the first step I've already given you, which is to sort out what your belief system is.
Right.
One sentence, one phrase one mantra that you will hold dear. But let's get a bit more practical now. If you take any skill, let's take sword fighting, just off the top of my head. You take the skill And the first step is you're rubbish at it. You're useless because you don't even know anything about swords. But then you pick up a sword, you swish it around a little bit, and you find you still suck. You realize, you acknowledge that actually you don't have any skill yet. So then you practice, and suddenly, sometimes you can flourish the sword in just the right way, but when you think about it. The next step after that is when you practice so much that you're actually good at it. And the final step is where you don't think about it anymore. Well, that final step is the level of spontaneity. So any master in any area, when they're at their highest level, they're at the level of spontaneity. They're not following a script anymore. They're just being. They're in their is-ness. So how to shortcut your way to is-ness, if there is such a thing, is to look at the world around you right now. Most people, in my opinion, outsource their thinking. They're letting someone else affect them on some level. And you'll see that through the behaviors they make when they're interacting with others. There's no spontaneity. We see this in patterned behavior. So, for example, you meet somebody, perhaps as a friend or someone you haven't seen for a while, and you greet each other in a very patterned way. Hi, how are you? Good. How are you? Yeah, I'm also good. You know, that's kind of watered down. I guess we all sound like that in Europe.
Yeah, well, flat cordiality like that is far from charismatic in any way, shape, or form, right?
Exactly.
It's just friendliness in a box.
There's no emotion. Now, if you go to an airport and you see people who haven't seen each other for a while, you know, you do a bit of people watching, notice how people greet each other at the airport. They don't just come off the plane, meet the other person, and say, hi, unless they're in a really bad mood. Most of the time, people throw their arms around one another, or they shake hands, or there's some spike of emotion. And so you can bring this spike of emotion, this authenticity, into any conversation by breaking the patterns that are around you. So I'll give you an example where you'll experience patterns all the time is when you go to the store. When you buy your groceries, the person on the checkout will greet you in a very patterned way. And if you follow the pattern, bye, just that. Okay, have you got a store card? No. Bye. Do you want a receipt? No. It's boring. No emotion. So what if you walk in and rather than doing your everyday usual routine of just going through the motions, you make little finger guns and you say, okay, this is a robbery. Actually, perhaps in some places, maybe don't do that in case you get shot.
Yeah, especially now that we all have masks on.
Yeah, you're literally in a Western. It's amazing.
Yeah, how about we reach for a different example before I get sued?
Yeah, okay. All right, so you say something like, hello, what's the most interesting thing that's happened to you today? And they might look at you and go, what you do, I don't understand. You might get a face of confusion because they don't know how to process what you've just said because you snapped them out, the trance they're in. You snapped them off their pattern.
Exactly. I once heard a motivational speaker say he greets everybody with, what do you know that's good?
Oh, I like that.
Well, right. How can that be a bad conversation? How can that turn negative?
Right. But then that becomes a pattern eventually.
Yeah, exactly. How charismatic is it to say the exact same thing verbatim to everybody you meet? So it kind of implodes on itself, doesn't it, as a concept?
Well, there is another concept, which I used to really not like, but came to actually appreciate, which is fake it till you make it.
Right.
And I hated it because I'm like, no, you got to be authentic. Fake it till you make it. What a load in. How's that going to help anyone? But then I realized what that does, just trying out a line like that, is it gives you training wheels. It gives you something that you're just using temporarily just to explore something you wouldn't normally do. So if you said, you know, hey, what do you know that's good? And you've never said that before. Great. You have new data now. You have a new experience. You're not just paying $5 to buy your groceries. If you're getting really, I guess you're buying ramen that day, right? But you're not just having a boring conversation. Now you're getting new information coming in, stuff that you could do, stuff that can reinforce your belief that, yeah, I'm a risk taker. I tried a new line out today. So what if, instead of, okay, you say, what do you know that's good? What if you tried, what do you know that's awful? What would happen if you said that? So it's adopting the mindset of what if. That enables you to foster the spontaneous approach to life. And what that does is it breaks patterns. When you break patterns with people in your interactions, it releases emotional energy. And when you release emotional energy, you're getting closer to being charismatic because you're now at the level of spontaneity.
Well, I think making any kind of social effort at all with people who are essentially strangers to you is inherently charismatic. If you can get past that initial awkwardness of, wait, I'm being talked to by a stranger, and I was taught as a kid never to talk to strangers. You know, what's going on there, right?
Yeah. I love that line. Hey, I know you were taught probably to never talk to strangers. That's good because I'm a stranger. Danger. You can use that as part of your conversation. I think it's important to remember, though, that when you pull somebody off a script, they're going to give you the confused face.
Yes, that's not rejection. For you guys who are talking to a woman for the first time, that's confusion. And the difference from an emotional intelligence perspective in being able to read that facial expression is all in the eyebrows. It's either furrowed eyebrows versus just raised eyebrows. But the rest of the face is going to be rather similar between surprise and disgust, which throws a lot of guys off. That's just a freebie. Yep. Yeah.
I like the idea that there's lots of different faces and ways of dealing with them. And what I find is when you pull somebody, when you pull somebody off. Wait a minute. Okay.
Don't worry. We're in the United States mostly, and guys don't even know what that means in the UK. Although I do. I'm an expert at tugging off. Yeah.
You told me not to get the giggles on this call, and now I'm getting the giggles.
Yeah,
all right.
It's all good.
So when you bring somebody off script, what happens is that they'll sometimes give you a confused face. If they're really awake, if they secretly want to have fun too, they'll riff with you straight away. But what their mind is looking for is a way out because they don't have enough information yet. And the trait that we're all hardwired to look for in others is consistency. We don't trust inconsistency with good reason, but we are hardwired to trust consistency. And so a big mistake that will happen is you might do something funny and say, you look like you brought the sunshine in with you. Like if somebody walks into your shop or something.
Beautiful.
As they look at you a bit confused, don't then say, sorry. No, I didn't. I just, that's now showing inconsistency. But if you just hold your smile, their mind will slowly warm up to the point where they're like, oh, okay, he's just having fun. All right, I get it. And then they'll loosen up. So it's remaining consistent in that period of 5, 10, a minute of time where they just need more information. It can take a while for them to warm up. But if you act inconsistent at any point in that time, you've blown it.
You know what's interesting about what you just said is it kind of registered in my mind that the opposite of being charismatic is probably creepy. Because if people find you creepy, they certainly don't want more of you. They're certainly not going to be influenced in any way by you except to run the other direction. And what is a major hallmark of creepiness is wild, unpredictable inconsistency. Like if a crazy homeless person comes up to you and they're being really quiet and really measured, then all of a sudden they go freaking crazy and wave their hands. You're probably going to go, and run away because it's just so shocking. And that's inconsistent by definition. So what you're saying, I think, is absolutely bang on target.
Well, can I add something to that?
Sure, man. Because,
you have figures through history who were creepy, who were charismatic. You have people like Rasputin, who, as history has judged, he's one of the, not sure about that guy, but he had still aspects of charisma. He had an aura about him.
Well, yeah, just to add something quickly to that, he was famously stinky. He had horrible personal hygiene, yet still pulled women like a big dog. Weirdly.
Yes, he did.
But there isn't a whole lot of reliable information and certainly no video of this guy. So, who knows if it's really there.
History is written by the winners, right?
Indeed.
So what it comes down to, I think I've been interested in this field for the last 15 years now. And as I've grown more accustomed to my art, to my trade, I've realized that actually simplification and simplicity, that's what I yearn for. If there's a simpler way of doing things, I'm all for it. And on one level, you could argue that really all social skills come down to calibration. What is the least amount of effort it takes to get the result you need?
Well, that's a great way to appear effortless, is not trying too hard at it.
Right. It's charming.
Yeah.
So what I'm actually interested in is what can I get away with? Now, I told you at the start about a friend I knew from university. He was the one who got me started on this journey. And one of the things I learned from him and tried when I first started the journey that never worked for me is he would do loads of crazy stuff. Then as I learned more, I realized that his secret was he was consistently inconsistent. He was so inconsistent with what he was doing, how he would talk to people, that he was consistent with it. And it worked. So he would break all the rules. He would, I remember him chatting up a girl in a bar, and he said something like, "Hi, I'm not trying to chat you up. Well, not that I wouldn't chat you up, well, okay, I'm trying to chat you up a little bit, but not too much. Not yet, anyway. And so he was so inconsistent in what he was doing, it couldn't help but be funny. Obviously, he had to be there. And that, for me, that was a light bulb moment. So I'm very interested in what is that sweet spot between socially acceptable and calibrated and creepy. It's a very fine line. It's more advanced, but it's definitely an area to be explored.
Well, I don't know. I think especially when it comes to relating to women, it has a lot to do with how safe the woman feels. If you're helping her have fun and your kind of zany, perhaps random humor or whatever is coming across in a way that still feels safe to her, then she's going to be fine. But if she feels somehow threatened, or this is just too weird, or I just don't know where this is going, that's when she's going to check out and run the other way. But I agree with you. I mean, there have been lots of charismatic people over the years, even famous people who have been charismatic by virtue of their calculated random behavior. I'm thinking of a lot of comedians, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why it's important when I use the definition of charisma at the start to make people feel comfortable as you're doing what you're doing. And there is that very delicate sweet spot. So with that in mind, what I would suggest to anyone listening right now is the next time you find yourself doing something you've done before, whether that's talking to somebody, whether that's just how you spend your time by yourself, do something different. So what I mean by that is if you're walking down some stairs and you always take each step at a time, slide down the stair rail. Do something that's a bit naughty. Break the everyday patterns, because those patterns are killing you. They're making you boring. Those little risks that you take, as long as you're consistent, as long as you've got a smile on your face, 9 times out of 10, you'll get away with it.
Boring isn't charismatic, is it?
No, boring is boring because there's no emotion. There needs to be emotion. That's what influences people anyway. If you're expressing yourself rather than trying to impress others, if you're just expressing yourself, you're going to find that some people love that. They're part of your clique. They're part of your tribe. And there's going to be some people that they don't gel with that. And that's fine because we're all different. But what you will find is it's not about influencing a huge room of people. It's about finding those who see the world as you do. And then as you build momentum up, you'll find others join in anyway. So rather than, like you said at the start, rather than trying to win over everyone and make everyone your friend and convince everyone of something.
Which is boring.
Yeah, right. It's best, first of all, convince yourself. Work out what your own unbreakable law is. Then, so as you go through life, living on your own terms and expressing yourself, you're going to find that people resonate with that. So as you move through life, do so on your own terms. Do so from a place that is an expression of the beliefs that you hold for yourself. And the first person you influence is you by expressing yourself from that belief that you hold about yourself. And you get to write whatever belief you want for yourself. For example, I'm really charismatic or I'm really lucky. And as you do that, life will test you, but your job is to keep moving through from a place of consistency. And as you do that, don't be surprised if other people join you on the journey. Realize that it's all about you and the story you're writing for yourself. It's not about your ability to convince everyone to your way of thinking. It's about convincing you of your own thinking and enjoying the results of that process.
Good stuff, man. His name is Marcus Oakey, and I've set up a special URL for you so you can visit his website and see about everything he's got going on. And that is mountaintoppodcast.com/Marcus, Marcus. And by the way, when you go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Marcus, you'll also find a free download on conversation skills, which is going to be valuable to you guys, I'm sure. Marcus Oakey, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm so glad we reconnected, and this has been a lot of fun.
Scott, thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it. Please don't leave it 10 years next time.
Yes, no doubt. We'll have you back on the show to talk about perhaps another side of what you do in helping guys being charismatic and being better with women. And guys, if you haven't been to mountaintoppodcast.com just yet, click on the button in the upper right-hand corner. Talk to me free for 25 minutes. We'll talk about where you are right now and where you want to be, especially with getting better women in your life. Guys, summer is going to be over before you know it. 2020 hasn't gone well for the vast majority of us here on this planet, but you're going to have to decide what your quote-unquote new normal is, and it all starts with getting your house in order, figuring out not only what your foundation is, like we talked about once again today, but what your goals are, what your ambitions are, the kind of woman you want in your life. Talk to me free for 25 minutes when you click the red button in the upper right-hand corner at mountaintoppodcast.com. While you're there, visit the good guys over at Origin, Maine. Check out their amazing boots. These are handmade. What can you say is handmade nowadays, especially in the good old US of A? I personally wear the Bison Boots from Origin, Maine, and I'll tell you what, they're fantastic. They're stylish and durable and comfortable, and I'm looking for excuses to wear them anytime I can. Also, check out our friends at Keyport, who make everyday carry devices that will allow you to be basically MacGyver in any situation where you're dependent upon as a man to get the job done, to be Johnny on the spot. Love those guys at Keyport. I personally have a pivot tool, which once you take a look at Keyport's line of products at mountaintoppodcast.com/Keyport, I'm sure you're going to want one too. And finally, last but not least, over at Hero Soap, you can score a way to not only get clean without any estrogenizing parabens polluting your body, but also smelling great for women, actually smelling like a man for a change, a clean one. And you can even get a bundle that saves you some cash while getting you the best soap you've ever had. And, oh, by the way, here's a hint. Make sure you get a couple extra bars for when women come over, because there's nothing like being able to suggest taking a shower with a woman and having a good excuse to do so, which is the good stuff when it comes to soap. Actually, the best excuse is because you're who you are and she's who she is. But I don't want to digress too hard. That's at mountaintoppodcast.com/hero soap. For all three of our main sponsors, gentlemen, you can use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 at checkout to get an extra 10% off above and beyond whatever deals you find at their respective websites. And you'll find all of that information from our sponsors and about X and Y Communications and more at mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X and Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X and Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X and Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.